Right, welcome everybody to lesson 2. Is there anybody, can anybody see that somebody is missing from last week?
Yes, Paul Tapman sends his apologies. He's got an appointment elsewhere. Marie's up in Norwich with her daughter.
Right.
That's it as far as I know.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Paul sent me a message that he couldn't make it. He said, but what is interesting is that his book, he has the same workbook and his pages run the same number as mine. So he's obviously got the same edition.
Yeah.
Right. We will see who's got your edition then and who's got my edition.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I hand over to Malcolm, can I just have a quick hands up in the air? Who managed to do our little bit of homework this week and got their workspace up and running? Yeah. Well, about half of you, so brilliant. Okie doke. Right, well, yeah, no further ado, over to you, Malcolm, and hopefully the screen will share as successfully as it did last week.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming back to join us for our second lesson. This is where we got to last week, where we were just setting up the workspace, which in Affinity they call the user interface, but we're going to call it our workspace because you make this up to suit yourself. One or two members were asking how I was opening things and where I was opening from, but I've got them saved in my own documents on my own computer, and I just keep them in a file that I've been making up for many years, and I know exactly where I keep mine. So I've got my files on an external drive, and I know that down on this left-hand side, I will actually find the workshop that we're doing today, lesson 2, and I've got that set up, and I know exactly where I will be picking them all up from. And if you remember, this is where we started last week, but this is the program we will be doing today. I want to just go over some of the basic introduction and recapping some of what we did, because I know we've got one or two extras that have joined us this week that weren't with us last week, and setting up your own workspace, which Affinity calls a user interface, and we'll go back to that. Going to just tour of the image manipulation software, opening and saving an image, and back to exporting, because this is where I think the program can be a little bit confusing, and opening a raw file and what you do with it once you've opened it. This is where we're going to be doing some new parts of the program, which is adjustments, and you'll find that adjustments is going to use the beauty of layers within Affinity, and we're just going to be doing brightness and contrast, which I will name the page that we're working from in the book, the workbook. The color intensity, which is also in the workbook, and changing an image to black and white. And if those of you that were with us on Thursday's lecture from the Welsh Dragon, that she was changing it, she did everything in black and white. She photographed in color, everything was turned into black and white. And there is a very simple method in Affinity that I will show you. It's not the method I use, and a lot of photographers don't particularly use that, but it is a very good starting point. I'm going to close the first part of the program, open a second one, which I'll know will come here. And if you remember, this was the menu bar that we used last week. And this I've now set up that you can see there is a difference between Windows users, which is across the top, and you will find this where my cursor runs across the top. That's the menu bar. And for Mac users, slightly different. And this is for the menu bar for Affinity users. And there is something that comes active under the Affinity Photo in Mac, but under the Affinity logo, there's nothing. That's all under the other tabs. So that is your menu bar. And to open the next one that we worked on, which was, and I find this quite strange that they list these in such an important part of the program. The first 5 tabs on the left-hand side, and liquify is something that you would get into much later on once you start learning the program. Develop is developing a raw, that is very important. Tone mapping is something you'll start to get into eventually as you get to understand the program more. And export, which is where you will find that within the other part of the program. We did that last week, and the other part that we did last week was the tools bar, which is over the top, which runs along past the personas, and there is a tremendous amount of operations within that toolbar that you can start to use. And you can just click on one of them and it will give you the title of what it does. It tells you that it's an auto levels. The next one is auto contrast. You open an image and you want to start in a simple way. You can click auto contrast or auto levels and it will do its own thing. May not be what you want, but that's where you'll get started, and you'll find that that's a good starting point for a lot of your work. This is the tools panel over on the left hand side. It doesn't have to be there, but I always find for my my workspace, this is comfortable for me. And this is your tools panel over on the left hand side, running all the way down. Tremendous amount of power within these. Some of them, if you click on them, you will find that there are other functions as well. So if you clicked on the marquee tool, you'll find that there are other options within that. And within this one that we used last week, the healing brush, the patch tool, the blemish tool, the inpainting tool, which I know some of you have been working with. So there are extra functions within the tools panel. I know this is going over a lot of what we did last week, but this is quite an important getting used to the program. The context toolbar, which, as I said to you last week, doesn't appear anywhere until you click on one of the tools. And I showed you last week, we clicked on the crop tool and then the context toolbar opened up where all the functions of that particular tool came alive. If you were to click back on the one here and click on something, everything within the context toolbar will come alive again there. And this is where you make all your settings within these tools. Very important, that's context toolbar for altering all your information. The studio panel, which I actually use over on the right hand side, but don't forget this is your own personal workspace you're going to be setting up. If you go to View, go to Studio, and there are all the palettes that you can open yourself, all the panels that you can open yourself. And we will be doing that shortly because we're going to be setting it up so we're all working from the same workspace. Now I think at this stage, I'm going to actually set up the the studio panel, and we will be going to view studio panel, and I'm going to open 4 of the most important panels that you need. Your first one is going to be your layers panel, because this is the beauty of Affinity, that you can work in layers, and that will become obvious as we start to work through the program. One of the other ones that I use a tremendous amount is history. And history, if you make a mistake, you can go back on your work at any time. You can go back with the slider on the top, or you'll see other bars come alive as well. The next one that you will be using quite a lot is the color. And color is here, and you'll actually find this will come alive as well once we open an image. And the final one is the brushes tool, which is here on the panel. So there's all the different brushes, and if you have a look, you've got a drop down arrow with all the different shapes and styles of brushes. And with this, I've actually got some strange ones that are spray and splatters and smoke and rainbows. There's lots of different brushes that you can actually add. At the moment, is all we're going to be using is the basic one. Okay, I'm going to go back to where we started last week with an actual image, and I'm going to go to File, go to Open, and I'm going to open that raw image that we opened last week, hopefully. And if you remember, for those of you that were with us, this opened up, and a basic panel over on the right hand side opened up. It might open up over on the left hand side, but for me it opens on the right hand side. Now that basic raw image, you've got a tremendous amount of control over that. You've got the exposure incorrect, so you can adjust that. Be careful if it starts to clip, and you can see the red and yellow start to clip, you've overdone the exposure with the adjustment. The black point will give you the amount of depth of black within the image. Be careful you don't overdo that. That will clip as well.
Malcolm, sorry, can I just ask,
yes?
How did you get that panel up? Because I've just opened up an image and I haven't got that panel at the side.
I'm going to close it, and I'm going to close it. But
thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to close this. I'm not going to cancel that.
Ian, is the image you've opened a raw image, or is it a JPEG?
Oh, it's a JPEG.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's why it's not open.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Otherwise, exactly where it would have been, you go to View, Studio, and you'll find there is a basic panel that you can find within that. But that, as Heather said, it's only if you've opened a raw image.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
For those that shoot in RAW, as you see, it hasn't opened this time because I've already closed it, but you've still got here View, Studio, and there's Basic there, and the panel will open. So be careful your clipping and your black point and your brightness, which is basically the white. And then you've got contrast. Be careful the clipping, it'll overdo it. Clarity. And you can carry on and actually make something of that image just in the raw. And you've got your shadows and highlights, and you can adjust your shadows and highlights. And don't forget to click Develop, which you'll find over here where the context toolbar would be, and click Develop. It will actually turn that into an image. Now, if you see for my own workspace, I've now opened the panel that I opened, which is the layers, history, color, and brushes. They've now come back to life, and I can now actually start working on that. I'm going to close that because I don't really want to save that. So I better close that. I don't want to save it. No. Okay, where we're going to now is I'm going, for those of you that are using the book, I'm on page 98, which is the changing the brightness and color intensity, which is this is where we will start to use the first of the layers. So I'm going to open that image from my computer, and here it is. It's going to open up a pretty boring sort of dull image that, say, has been taken in the garden. And if you actually look across the top, it's telling you which camera this was taken. Whoever took this photograph, you can see the camera that it was taken with, the lens it was taken with, and some of the other details, that it was f2.8 and all the other information. So the information is there across that context toolbar there that's opened up as well. Now I'm going to go over this because the layers panel is alive. It could have been the history or the color or brushes, but we want the layers panel alive. So click on that tab. Now along the bottom of that, there's a tremendous amount of power. And this first one is a mask for making masks. And we will probably be doing that in lesson 3 next week. And this is adjustments. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to show you the amount of adjustments that it allows you to make. And there are all the adjustments within this simple adjustment that you could be using, which is levels, white balance, the hue, saturation and luminosity. You can recolor it black and white, and we'll use some of these. And there is a tremendous amount of power within that. But the one within the book, it's just the brightness and contrast that we're using. I've opened up the HSL, which I'm going to get rid of, because there's a waste bucket there, down there, which if I click on that, it's going to get rid of that layer, because I opened that up by mistake. And this is the one I'm working on now. Be careful, because I've done that. The only thing that is alive now is the background and not the layer. And you do need to left click onto the layer to bring that back alive. Now with that, the actual operation isn't working. So I need to double click on the actual square itself. And this is what has opened. And according to the book, you can alter all the adjustments within this brightness. And what does it ask us to do? Can you remember what it says in the book, Paul? I think the hue.
Sorry, yeah, I muted myself, sorry. It's suggesting brightness at 10% for this particular image, and contrast, believe it or not, racked right up to 100%.
So you can either stretch it on the sliders, or you can click into the box and type in the amount it's telling you and click enter, and you will actually see the difference it's made. But you can move these sliders and do what you like with them until it works out the way you want it. You've also got opacity. You can take some of the opacity down to the fierceness that you've added, or you can use your blend modes as well. And you've got all the different blend modes and get some tremendous amount of different effects with the blend modes. And you can see going through, and you can test those to see what a difference they make. I'm going to leave it on normal. I'm going to close that. We're going to leave it on those settings that it wanted. But now, if you take that, untick that layer, it's taken it back to where you started. Click it back again and you're back to where it was. But you're not happy with that, so double click on the actual brightness itself, and you can add some more. You can add some more to that to make it even more punchy or less punchy. And that is the beauty of using the layers within this program.
Now, Malcolm, can I ask a question?
Yes.
The book, the picture in the book differs very greatly to what you've got on your screen, in as much that on the left-hand side, about 1/3 down, I've got a strange-looking out of focus area where in the book it's like a maple leaf cut out. It's very strange.
Is it not the same? Is it not the same image?
No. Well, it's the same image, but it's got this weird. Your one's got, well, the one I'm looking at on the screen has got a strange artifact. No, go on, up a little bit. There,
yeah,
there, that area there.
I tell you why, because I'd probably worked on this at some time and done some other experiments with it. But
okay.
well spotted, because I think in the book there is actually a hole there, isn't there?
Yeah, big brown one.
Yeah.
Oh, you tried to clone it out, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, no, we were probably experimenting with this, thinking that it's a very basic start to the book.
Yeah.
This is the real beginning of using layers within the book, and I think we were messing around with this.
Okay.
I would probably have to go back and re-download this image from Affinity.
Fine.
Thanks for spotting that, David.
Actually, when you look at it, there's quite a few other differences.
Yeah, you're probably right.
All right.
It's but with it, this is the beauty of layers. If you don't like what you've done, make sure that is highlighted.
Yeah.
If you left click on it, you can change the name to anything you like.
Right.
And you can change that to whatever you like. But you can also then get rid of it by just clicking on the waste bin at the bottom there, and that layer's gone. Be careful you don't do that to the background, because that will get rid of your background as well.
Okay.
So just go over that again. There we are, onto the adjustment. And the adjustment is like a little yin and yang symbol. Click on that, brightness and contrast. And we were going something like 10, and then 110.
100.
Close that. And there we are, something a little bit more interesting than what we started with.
Don't you have to press develop then, no?
No, okay, that's a good question. Develop is only to deal with raw images. If your camera is not shooting raw, or you're not set the camera to raw, then you won't be needing to use develop. These are straightforward JPEG images that are not needing developing. They just need adjustments and alterations to how you want them to look.
Okay, thanks.
But no, don't matter what sort of question you ask. It might be a question somebody else was too frightened to ask. So that's a good question. But I think you need to go and ask Paul to talk to you about raw images and the difference between raw images and JPEGs. And very, very important in photography itself. What we're dealing with at the moment is just manipulation program.
Malcolm, I've got one quick question.
Yes, you certainly can. Carry on.
I shoot in RAW.
Yes.
And I put everything into Lightroom.
Yes.
When it goes into Lightroom, it's set to change it to DNG, a digital negative, whatever it is. Is that, to all intents and purposes, the same as RAW?
No.
Ah, right.
In actual fact, you should be trying to save it as a JPEG or a TIFF, so that you can then bring it into whichever program you're using.
But I was led to believe that the DNG was a universal.
Yeah.
Oh, well, DNG. Then you are looking at a universal JPEG. Yeah, it's a universal RAW.
RAW, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
But there is a way to actually take stuff in and out of Lightroom through Affinity. But you need to go through the process of telling your program Affinity that you want to be using Lightroom. But that is another lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But it's but thanks for that.
Okay.
Malcolm,
Yes.
you're on here. I've opened up my bar and I've got histogram up, but I can't go back. How do I close it?
You.
Okay. If I show you, I've opened up history, and what I've actually done is left click on the tab, pull it out,
Okay.
and there's a little cross on the right hand side. You can individually close that one.
All right, I look for that. Right, okay. Thank
But
you.
I want that, so I'm going to bring that back again. Studio, as history is quite important. But if it's out, you can actually dock that back into the whole group.
Yeah.
Because you don't want them all floating all over the place. Your workspace gets messy. But I'm glad you've mentioned that, because if I click on the history tab, you can see everything I've done, and you can either go back with this slider and undo everything and start back from the beginning again, even where I opened that HSL file, or where it was, you can actually go back individually on different parts. And this is where I renamed that tab, and you can go back on the history. So you've got different ways of dealing with it.
Malcolm, when you had the background layer, so you had the background layer, did you click on the background layer to start doing all those adjustments, or did you open another layer? Because I saw there was two layers.
Right.
You've got
Okay.
brightness.
You need to be on the background layer, because that is what you're going to be altering. So if I now go to adjustment and go to the levels, it's now, I'm going to change the levels and do silly things with it. Change the levels, and that's what I've done. And I've made a pig's ear of it. So and there is now, you can see in the layers panel the word levels.
Yeah.
I can
thanks.
either double click on the little square and undo what I've done because I've overdone it, and take it back. If I'm still not happy with it, I can just either go back in history or get rid of it. But make sure before you get rid of it, that is the one that's highlighted. Click
Oh,
on
yeah,
it,
sure.
and now that's gone. But if you're going to do an adjustment, be careful you're not doing an adjustment by the brightness and contrast. You need to be an adjustment to your background.
Okay.
And the background, you could actually left click on that and change the name again. So we call that leaf, and you now know that that's your background. But be careful what you're doing, because altering these around will make a difference. And if I take the brightness and drop it below the leaf, it is now not affecting the leaf at all, because it doesn't know what it should be working on. So it needs to be above what it's actually working on, which is above there.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to close that, and I don't want to save it, which I've done many times, Dave, but thanks for that. Okay, that was on one of the adjustments, which was brightness and contrast. Some of these images are quite strange, but I'm working with the book. So this was the Hue and Saturation and Luminosity. This is, go away zoom, I can't get, that's it. And if you can see, I've got the background with this this lightning flash. This is now on page. This is now on page 100.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's 101. Are your numbers the same, Dave?
No, mine are different.
Yeah, you could quite possibly be the same as Paul, but this is on page 100 and 101.
Yeah, the blue one's on page 100 on mine.
That's it. Yeah. So you got the same edition that I've got. I don't know how many editions of this book there are, but Paul and I found this quite early on that we were working from different editions.
I'm putting the pages that my edition are on the chat. So if people want to know the page, just look on chat.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. This is one of the important parts of Affinity, is the fact that you can use layers. Lightroom is about using a catalogue or a library or some other system the way that you need to be filing your own images, so you know where you can find them. I tend to use mine by relying on my memory and naming things to remind me. So if you were a photographer that liked taking lots of landscapes, you need to know where you put them on your computer and naming them landscapes for different parts of the world that you visited. If you like doing skies, the same with skies, and whatever it is, you need to work out a way of naming, and Lightroom is a very, very good way of doing it. Okay, we've downloaded another image, which is this one that you've done of it's probably some sort of trail that trails on a motorway, but this is what the program has given us to look at. We're going to go to the same again adjustments down at the bottom. Very, very simple. Hue, saturation and luminosity. And this is the box that opens, which I found quite fascinating. All the little color dots relate to the colors that they represent. The first one, which is a multicolor, if you click on that, you're going to affect every color within that image. If you click on the red dot, you can see our circle is only affecting the red within the image, and the yellows and the greens, and you can see it moves around the circle to what it's actually working on. And then we're around to just the blues and the magentas. With the book, it is working on the master, which is all the colors within the color circle. You've got opacity here as well. And within this, we were going to be giving the hue something like minus, and you can do a minus 110, and you'll see a tremendous color change and shift when we do that. And then again, it was giving saturation 10, and all I'm doing is typing in 10, hitting the enter key, and the mode and the opacity we're keeping the same, but you can change the luminosity as well, and that will make a big difference to whatever you're doing. So you can make it darker, but if you're just changing all the different colors within the image, why you would want to do that, I don't know, but it's there for you to do. Close that. You think you've made a pig's ear of it, you can either re-click, double click on your little box and open it up again and work on it again. Or you can go to, at this stage, go to your modes and change all your modes, and you've got lots of different modes there. You can experiment with those. And the other method you can use, go to your history, and you can go back on your history either by clicking on them or going right the way back on the slider all the way left to what you've done, and we'll undo everything. Any questions on that?
You know, when you said you save a picture, you said export. When you go to export, it comes up saying, do you want it flattened? Do you want it flattened?
Right. Good question. Are you on Windows or Mac?
Windows.
Okay. In Windows, you'll go to File. Now, and this is an important question, if you start to scroll down in your File menu, you'll see a little box there that Save History with Document. If you click on that, it will come up. Do you want to save all your history? If you say yes, now when you go to export, it will actually export it with the history and your layers.
Oh, okay.
And we're not going to export that as anything else other than the JPEG at this stage. If you're into saving as TIFFs, you can do. I know some do. And if you were going to be using this in Photoshop, you could save it as a Photoshop file, which is there. But at the moment, we're just going to save that as a JPEG, and the size of it. And you can see this would be a massive image that is 15 megabyte. You don't want it that big, so make it a bit smaller. Probably too small. If you then go export, it will ask you what you want it to be named. So you will want to change the name, but I don't, because I'm going to close that and I don't want to keep it. And I'm going to, yes.
Yeah. What's the point of saving the history with it if you're going to save it as a JPEG? Doesn't saving it as a JPEG automatically get rid of all the layers and bits?
Yes, it does. You would only do that if you really wanted to keep the history and work back on it again. But you'd have to start from scratch again. But you'd have the history of where you went.
Because isn't it better to save everything with as much up at 100% to get as much information and detail as possible? Because once you've dumped it, that's it, you're buggered, it's gone.
You're exactly right. You would really want to be saving, if you're that sort of photographer that likes keeping all your layers and all your files as they are, which you probably have done forever, then that is what you need to save your layers and you need to save your history. But it's asking whether you want the history as well saved with it. So it is trying to save space on your computer if you want to work that way. But we all work in different ways, and you probably like to keep all your layers so you can work back on the layers. When you look at it a month later, you think, no, I didn't quite get that layer right. I can do another alteration. So yes, you save everything if you want.
Yeah, I think because I cop up frequently, I like to have the ability to go back and put it right.
You're now talking as an advanced worker, and that is perfectly true. Any other questions? I'm going to close that. I'm going to go into the next page, which, as I said earlier, is not the way I would actually make a black and white image, but this is how the basic work within the book shows how simple it is. There are lots and lots of ways and methods of changing a color image to black and white, and this is how it's suggested at beginner level, and there's no reason why we shouldn't start at that. I'm going to open this one, which will be my image down here. And why you would want to change this to black and white, I don't know, but this is the exercise that we are being given. Page 102 and page 102 and 103 in the book. I would probably be looking at going up into my plugins and using Nik Collection or Topaz for changing this to black and white as a good starting point. But the book is just giving this in black and white in this simple way. At the moment, my history is alive within my studio panel. I don't want that. I don't want the brushes. I don't want the color, but I want the layers, because this is where we're going to be just change it in a simple way. The simple way is back to your yin and yang symbol, which is adjustment. And there you'll see the second one down is white. Sorry, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one down here, fifth one down, black and white. It will instantly change it to black and white, or some sort of version of black and white. And I said, I don't know why you would want to change this to black and white. It's not the sort of image I would really be working on. This is what it's given you as a starting point. Now, photographers that are used to using filters on their cameras will know that if you're shooting an image in black and white film, or you've set your camera to black and white, you change the reds and you'll get a tremendous amount of, or everything that has got anything red in it will actually change considerably. And you can actually see the reds within the image changing. You've got all the control over it. And because of the sky being blue, change that and you'll find a lot of difference within the sky. And I think that's getting nearer to what I would find a more enjoyable sky. There's probably very little magenta in that, only within the plant life itself. And the yellows, now the greens, of course, the actual plant life and the grass, you're going to see that brighten up as well. So although that's where it gave you a starting point for black and white, that's where you can actually then make a lot of difference to the colors. The opacity, if you've overdone it, you can take that down and it will take it back to your color as well as you take the opacity out. But it's not the way I would normally be working with black and white, but this is how the basic beginnings for black and white from a color image. Close that, you start to look at it, or you come back to it a couple of days later and you think, not very happy with that. You've gone to your export and you've clicked save with history. Yes, you do want to save the history. Go to export and you're going to export that. And then you've exported it as a name. You've given it a name and you've exported it. Next day, when you open it up, you think, don't like it, but I'm going to go back to that and start again. Oh, let me actually export it. Go export, save it as a JPEG, and I'm going to go export. Give it a new name. Give it a new name, and I've now, hopefully it saved it back in the same place. I'm now going to close it. I don't want to save the original one, so I'm going to go no to that. If I go back and open that, which is now the new one that's ending in new, open that. It's opened it up as it was. In the layers, there's virtually nothing there because we saved it as a JPEG, but the history should be there, but it isn't because it saved it as a JPEG. So you are right, Heather, it flattens everything and takes everything out.
How do you know what sizes to save things as?
Very, very good question. You've gone to export. Right. Can you see what has opened here?
Yeah.
The first, if we've just clicked on JPEG, which is going to get rid of all our layers and all our history, but at the moment the size is the pixel count across the image is 4,500. The pixel count from top to bottom is 3,327. That's what the image actually is. There's a next box down that will actually ask you whether you want the best quality or if you want high quality or medium or low. You click on any of those, and what will happen is down the bottom here, you'll actually see a little line that says estimated file size. And at the moment, this is 9.93 megabytes. You change the one from best to high, and it will recalculate it is now 3 megabytes, three and a half megabytes, and so on, until you get down to that sort of figure, 650. If I'm putting something on the web, I don't want that amount of size. I will take it down even smaller, a bit below 500 KB, because I don't want to be sending through the internet or putting anything that big. I think you need to talk to Paul about different sizes, what needs to be saved. And if you were saving it for a club competition, you need to be putting in your pixel size across the top. Plus you need to be setting the actual this size to the right size for what that needs to be. That would be nearer a so.
See, when I do the club, if you do the competition, I only put 16 times 12. I haven't got a clue about anything else underneath that. So it just goes 16 by 12 and JPEG. So it would be good to know that, yeah.
Yeah. Can you do a one-to-one with Paul so he can take you through that, or with those that want to sort of, because it's quite important.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
That you get that right. If you were sizing this for the club, yes, you would be going to the actual crop tool to now get your sizes. And so if you were making that an actual a physical size, you can put in inches or centimeters. But if you were then going to make that, say, 1600 pixels by, and I've typed in pixels.
Malcolm, you just need to change those units first. You've got inches up still.
Sorry, thank you very much. It'll go into pixels, 1600 by 1200. Thank you, Paul. Whatever that will actually be the size of that now, which is far too small. So you have to work out how that's got to be scaled down to the 16 by 1200. If you open that up, it will start to make it even bigger again. That's where you've actually started from.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions on that? Because I think all I wanted to do was get this workspace opened and the basics for starting the layers panel, because I think that's very, very important to what the program will allow us to do. So as you can see, back to where we originally started with this, with the adjustment, and I'm going to do, and this one was doing this in brightness and contrast. So whatever you do with this, you're going to, and there's your layer, the extra new layer that's open. You can turn it on and off to see what you've done. Double click on it to actually open up your workspace again and do some more adjustments until you're happy with it. But it was just, today's lesson was mainly getting used to starting with the layers, because with this you could open up, if I click on the background, open up another adjustment, which would be HSL this time, alter the colors, and you can do a tremendous amount of alteration on that. Why you'd want to do it, I don't know, but this is just an exercise. Go back to your, open up another with your curves, and you can change your curves once you learn how to do that, and open another one. And this is opening a new layer each time. and you wanted to change that to black and white. Right, this is interesting because the black and white has gone above the background, and it hasn't altered anything else above it. You would need to left click on that, take that to the top for it to actually start to work.
I think, Malcolm, you're on white balance, not
Yeah,
black and white.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Have to get these glasses changed. And if you're on black and white, double click on that, your box will open and you can do all your alterations again to what you want to. But now you've got a tremendous amount of build up within the actual layer palette itself, and any of those you can be deleted or they can be altered again. Actually, I think that's made a better job of the leaf now. But you can turn them off, get rid of them, delete them. All the other adjustment programs that are out there work in a similar way, but slightly different clickings on and off of the one I've used in the past. Actually gives you a little eye on the left hand side to turn on and off. This gives you little tick boxes.
Oh.
If you haven't yet got your workspace sorted out, you need to really get that sorted out. And your four most important panels that need to be open is your layers, color, brushes, and history. And if you can see within the history what we've done here, we've done all that work, and you could go right the way back to the beginning again, or at any stage find where you were. And within that history, you can actually go back and start again or work wherever you like.
Brilliant.
Have you got anything to add, Paul? Because I'm going to wind down now.
Yeah, a couple of things whilst we're still recording. Dave asked about DNG. Again, I've put it on the chat. You're absolutely right, Dave. It stands for digital negative, and it is the open source RAW format. So when you open an image that you've brought into Lightroom, it will still go through the Affinity's RAW converter.
Yeah, yeah.
So it will be. It's basically a RAW file by a different name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because with that, Paul, I know my version of Photoshop doesn't open my raw files. I used to have to put them through the Canon DNG converter to convert it and then bring it into Photoshop in that way.
Right.
Yeah.
You may need to experiment, Dave, but do give me a call or WhatsApp me if you've got problems, because it's pretty basic. You need to get your images into Affinity, don't you?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I get an image into Affinity. I don't alter it in Lightroom. I can just click on Affinity and it will take it straight in there.
Oh, brilliant. And then it goes through the RAW converter, does it? Brilliant. Brilliant.
There is a way, Dave, it's a technical way of actually telling Affinity to open from your own version of Affinity to open your files to go from Lightroom into Affinity, but you need to go through the process of telling your version of Affinity that that's what you want to do and Lightroom and tie them together.
Yeah, yeah. My problem comes in getting the image that I've done in Affinity back into Lightroom. That's where the problem lies, and I have to go via my desktop and then drop it in manually.
Yeah, because you would need to go through this this process so that they can both interact with each other.
Yeah, well, it interacts one way, but not the other.
Yeah, because you've got to go into your additional external editor to do that. There is a way of doing it. You can either contact me and I can take you through it, or you can find it on YouTube. There's tremendous amount of information on how to do it in YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Right, we are sort of coming to the end now. Before I ask Chris just to turn the recording off, I'm going to tongue-in-cheek here say, here's your homework, guys, for this week. I suggest that you bring in one of your own images and pick one that you want a bit of brightness and contrast, and then pick another one that you want a bit of black and white. If you want to go through the raw converter first, i.e. bring a raw image in, by all means, but if Lynn wants to just bring in a JPEG, then that's fine. You don't need to go through the raw converter. But then try those two adjustment layers, the brightness and contrast and the black and white. And just try it a few times so you get yourself au fait with it, because we are still really at the basics, but it is very very useful to do. Right, thank you very much. Stay online, but can I just ask you to stop recording now?